Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to go over recipe approval, what you need to submit for approval, and then a little bit about inspiration. Alright, so in this video I'm going to go over recipes, more particularly how to do it in the food processor, because this is my first attempt in my recipe. I have been baking. I barely did test 1. I haven't done the second version and did test 2, but always go to dinnertonight.com, well not dinner.com, dinnertonight.tmu.edu/resources. That's where we have all the stuff we've done. And if you remember from, I believe it was Elaine who talked about your dinner tonight content process checklist. So I already clicked on it, but it was this. So this is like, remember your theme. My theme for my particular week is healthy family mealtime routines. And I did a little poll, and basically baking's the best thing because it gets everyone involved. So my recipe then is going to be a baked good, and I wanted to make something simple. But you, of course, main important is your recipe. So mine's a baking one. I'm gonna do almond butter cookies, and I'm gonna minimize this a little so we can see both. So on this document, when it comes to recipe, as you can see here, you also want to have a few things, right? You have to have your recipe document, which I will go over. You're going to want to have your food label, which we're going to do today, and you're going to go over your esha ingredient list, which we're going to do all today. So today we're doing 2. But ideally, to get that all set up, what I usually do is create a Word document, and I pretty much have it already set up. So this is extra. This is just in case I need to reference it later. It's my inspiration. So I saw these 2 recipes and I kind of combined it. But of course, for any recipe you create, if you're getting inspiration from other 2, you have to change 2 to 3 different ingredients. And I definitely changed it. They're both peanut butter cookies. I switched it to almond butter cookies. But it's not a complicated recipe. It's pretty simple. But now we got to do the esha list. Because remember, if you look on this document, we have to do the esha ingredient list. We have to put this in the food processor. So you do not have access to it right now, but I know Odessa's going to get you access. And when you do, you have to call IT so they can download it, because you have to get admin control for your computer. You know how that goes. But anyway, once you get it, you click on it, and this is what it's going to look like, right? You have in there. Now, it's not too complicated, but it can be a little frustrating at times. But first and foremost, you're going to click New. And then right here, it says Recipe. So you're going to click Recipe. You want to give your recipe a name. When it comes to recipe names, you don't need to get, not that we're against creativity, but you don't have to get crazy, right? Like I could have said like fluffy almond butter cookies, like calm down. Just almond butter cookies is fine. You really want to just make sure the ingredient is in the name itself, so when someone's researching it, they can find it. The recipe makes 12 servings, and then you don't really need to mess with too much of these. The only one that you're gonna mess around one later on is the label serving information. I'll click on it right now, but we'll go back. But here's where you're gonna put your servings per container. I'm gonna put 12, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do for household measure, but we're gonna revisit this part. Okay, so my recipe is not complicated, so I don't have to worry about my list, but you do want to have your list next to you. So I usually print this out and then include it in my recipe. So first thing is almond flour. That's my first ingredient. So it's not super popular. So ideally you want to get ones that say USDA approved, because this is not a very popular item. You're just going to pick the best thing there. So I'm going to just choose the first one, almond flour, and you may have to just play around with this one, but it's different ingredients there. Okay, anyway, once you pick your ingredient, you're going to pick the quantity, which is 2, and then you're going to pick the measures. So mine's 2 cups, so it's there. Press OK. Then I have almond butter. See, now this has a long line. You see this a lot of ingredients. So ideally for this one, you want to pick a USDA one. And that one says unsalted, and then this one says this one. And we might have to do unsalted because we have to, one of your recipe requirements is to make sure it doesn't go over a certain amount of sodium. So if you go back to our website with our resources, at the very bottom gives you the recommendations of your recipe. So I have these open on my website. I highlighted what we're going to look over on my particular recipe. But of course, it's going to change for every recipe that you do. But these are the handouts. I would highlight what works for you for your recipe. So for me, I am doing a dessert. So I have to make sure it contains 10% or less the daily saturated fat. And that's a little hard for me. Sometimes I can't always catch this, but that's why Joss'n made me look at it. What you can see right away is going to be the sodium. So because we're doing a side dish or slash dessert slash drink, we have to make sure it's under 480 milligrams. For regular recipes, it's 600, and this one we can see, and I'll show you the label. And then when we're doing a recipe in general, it's nice to have more, but it has to have at least one of the following. So make sure it either has iron, fiber, calcium, potassium, A or C. But we had a new document, so I want to pull that one up. And in this particular document, it says for desserts, we need to make sure there's more A and C. So this is for desserts right here. I'm going to highlight it in a different color, pink. So for desserts, guidelines and updates, this is on the same website. It's the 2021 update. This is what we also have to make sure and look for. Make sure it has a vitamin A and vitamin C. So when we do this recipe, that's what we're going to be looking for. But again, this is all on our Dinner Tonight resources. So once you do all of that, we're going back to the food processor, going to almond butter, and I'm going to pick the regular one. We might have to change it. We'll see. And we're going to hit select. Now we're going back to measurements. I want to say it's 2. I don't remember from the top of my head. 1. It's 1 cup of almond butter. So 1 cup. Press OK. Then the next one's maple syrup. And sometimes it takes a while to process. I must have misspelled something. So fun fact, I'm a horrible speller. So if it didn't pop up, always check your spelling. There we go. Yeah, it was my spelling. Okay, so back again, you want to pick one usually that has USDA because we trust them. They're a reliable source, but there's a lot of different maple syrups from there. And of course, if there's a particular ingredient that you're using and you want to emphasize it, then pick the brand that you like, but we always just usually pick USDA. And again, see, there's so many different ones, but good old faithful. So it's 1 tablespoon, and I actually haven't tried this version. The first time I did this recipe, I did it without maple syrup and vanilla extract, and the recipe was kind of like the cookies were just too dry. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it wasn't good. And then I was experimenting, or not experimenting, I was researching, and that's how I came up with some people add maple syrup. I'm like, okay, something we can try. And then we're gonna add egg whites. Now this might be a little more difficult because egg whites are not super popular. Yep, you see, there's no USDA. So, without a doubt, we're gonna just keep looking. Omelette, Frida, meal, golden. Okay, so I took off the S just because if you looked at the one with the S, all my answers was like with a meal, and we don't want it with a meal, right? We just want the ingredient itself. So by simply taking away an S, putting egg white instead of egg whites, that made a difference. See, now we have some options like egg white dried, USDA, reduced glucose, frozen. Okay, I didn't know there was frozen egg whites. Did anyone know that? Reduced glucose, raw. I feel like that works because it is raw. That's what we're using. And again, we might have to play with this one because it's not very common. Yeah, okay, now it's getting too crazy. Okay, we'll try that one, and if it doesn't work, play around with it. Okay, I had a 1/4 cup, and you can either do the fraction or the decimal when putting it in there, and it still works. Now, wasn't sure with this one, but there's only 3 options, and I'm gonna pick the first one. I put 1/2 teaspoon, and I might actually just make it into 1 depending on my label, but this is my whole recipe. We are now done. If you look at this top part, it says number of servings 12 because I had typed it in, but you see how it says 44.24 grams per serving? This is where we're going to go back into our label and play with it. But let's say we're going to stop for now and look at our label. You click right here, it says view label. So this is where, right here, see serving size is grams. So later, when I was talking about our recipe, you want to click, let's go here. You're going to hit edit recipe. This goes back to where we were at, remember at the beginning, 12 servings. Well, you're going to scroll all the way down to where it says label serving information. And this is where it's going to say high grams. And here, ideally, depending on the recipe, you want to put like a cup, 2 cups. If you ever look at labels, they usually say about 1/2 cup to a cup. Like they never say anything like that. But it's a cookie, so 1 cookie, like, you know, you don't want to be like 1 cup cookie. That makes no sense. But I hit okay. So just be cautious when you're editing your label. And this does take practice. I believe the first time I messed with this recipe, it was, well, not this recipe, in general, using the food processor for esha, like, oh, it was such a headache. Okay, it took a while to load. It's done. So this is the first label. We're going to say view label again. And you see now there's no grams. It just says 1 cookie, so it hides it. Now, this is a first glance. This is what we're going to look at, but there's another document that Amy and Odessa need. But in first glance, you're going to see that we have calcium, which is good. We have iron, which is good, and we have potassium. Now, they don't say 10%, so let's go back to this recipe. It says at least 10%, and I wonder if I double these recipes and it says 24 instead of 12, that makes a difference. So let me do 24 and double this. This is 2 cups, then 4 cups, 2 cups. What's 4th and 4th half? That took a while. 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and then 1 teaspoon. Okay, so this is updated. I'm not gonna hit save yet. We're gonna play around with it. But that's one thing, like I already know right away that they're gonna say, hey, it doesn't meet the 10%, so I might get flagged on that one. Another thing you have to look at is sodium. So we're definitely okay with our sodium. It says 55 milligrams, and I want to say it had to be 480. Yeah, so 480 milligrams. We're way below on our sodium. That's the first one I always look for, sodium, because I guess I like salt. But yeah, we're okay in the sodium. Beneficials, it says 10% or more. See, I know I'm going to get flagged, so we gotta fix it somehow. Another thing here, it says recipes and guidelines. You know what I'm going to wonder? And I have to play around with this recipe. I know I'm doubling it, and let's see if that makes a difference, but I also wonder if you just, you know, sometimes you just put milk, even if it's just like 1/2 tablespoon, if that would make it up. Let's add that first. I know I doubled it before changing it, but let's say we add almond milk. Right, this whole recipe is almond cookies. So see, this one's very popular. So I'm just gonna go with this is chocolate. Okay, I just want original. Here we go. Unsweetened USDA almond milk. Select. And let's say maybe 1. Let's try it. See view label. See, there. We got the calcium just by adding 1 tablespoon. Okay. So let's go back to this and go undo to everything I just did. So then we had 1 tablespoon maple syrup and 1 tablespoon almond milk unsweetened. And I haven't tried this recipe. The first time I did this recipe, I just did the first 3. Like, I'm gonna cut this out. That was my recipe the first time I did it because I didn't want to complicate it. But it was a very dry cookie. It was like you have to eat it with milk or something. But by adding just these 3 ingredients, you can tell, like, hey, I have to hit one of these. So I now have my calcium. It's now at 10%. Again, when it comes to recipes, one of the requirements especially is to make sure you hit one of the 10%. One of these. One or more, ideally more, but we got the calcium and that's all I'm grateful. Okay, now there's gonna be a sugar. Calories, that depends on the serving size, cholesterol, added sugars, total calories. Oh, okay, so this requires a little math. I'm gonna do a different color. It says servings contain limited amounts of added sugars or caloric sweeteners. Calories from added sugars should not exceed 10% of total calories for the day. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that requires the math, and I might just make them do it because I'm not an expert on that part. But this is the label. Total fat is 20 grams. That I can look over. Okay, what is my fat requirement? My fat requirement is, okay, trans fat, 0.5 grams or less per serving. I think I'm okay. I could be wrong. I might be high because it's almond butter. Nut-wise tends to be kind of high, semi-fat. Okay, so here where it says total fat, emphasis should be on saturated fat and trans-saturated fat. Okay, I just know I hit my calcium and my sodium. I did some sugar alternatives, so when doing baking ones, you want to look into that. On the second document, where's the second? This one. It gives you the links and you can click on them to see what works. Now, let me see if I have vitamin C and A in my recipe. That we have to look into the label. So I want to say I'm okay. I'm not sure on this one, guys. I'm not sure on the fat part. I just always look for the sodium because I always go too high. And I know when it comes to one of these, you have to at least have one that's 10%. So for my checklist, I'm okay. But we will see, and I will give you an update on whether I had to change it. But anyway, this is the recipe of the cookie, the label. Now what we're going to give Odessa and them is a different document. So we're going to go to reports. And I want to say we click this one. I could be wrong. There's a particular form we have to give them. And yes, I want to say this is it. So this particular form, you want to save it and give it to Odessa and Amy. You can just download it and send it to them for approval. So that's what I'll be doing, and that's the end for this recipe. Okay, really quick, going back into our recipe. So to get instructions to make sure you have the right document, it's this last video here on our dinner tonight resources. So you can definitely go through the process. Everything I went through, it's on the website. You can practice with it and learn with it. Again, I hate to say practice makes perfect, but it makes a difference, especially with this particular program. But this document, you want to save. Oh, this is saving recipe. So when you hit the save button, this says okay. So our recipe is saved. So I can always come back later on to come mess with it. And then for this particular document, what did I do? Oh, export. There you go. Okay. So this looks so dated. Let me stop. So what I did to export, and everyone's computer's different, there might be an easier method, but I right clicked, then I hit export, and then earlier it said PDF. What the heck happened? Again, it's a playing around with things. Oh, here we go. Make sure it says PDF, and then destination says. This file makes the most sense to me, so we'll see where that shows up. Okay, so it's one page. Press OK. Okay, I don't even know where all of this is, but I'm gonna go in my trust area. I put everything on downloads on desktop, so I'm gonna put it on desktop. I'm gonna add to this and put almond cookies. Recipe card with multi-column. You're gonna press OK. And there you go. So then we gotta change my recipe. So my recipe has it there, but I didn't put where to mix it. So then let me add. There you go. We have to add my milk. Hit save. So then when you're sending your recipe for approval, this is being approved, it hasn't even been approved, guys. But when you're doing this recipe, you're gonna want to send it to Odessa. Odessa's currently doing it. I'm also gonna send it to Amy. Amy usually does it, but right now she's on, she needs a break. Okay, anyway, so then recipe approval. Again, I'm a horrible speller. Thank you for autocorrect. Okay, we're gonna attach my recipe, which is this one. We're gonna attach the almond cookies recipe card with multi-column, and that's usually all they need for this one. But what I might add, just to give you an idea, they don't need it, but you do need it for when they do your total recipe. So going back into the website. So here we have our recipe document, which is basically what it is. We have our esha ingredient list, which is what we just enter, the multi-column document, and now we're going to export our food label. So this is number 2. We've done 1, we know what our theme is, 2 is this, and so then let's do it. So going to labels. This is my label. We're gonna hit, I'm at a different time. So we're currently running reports. We're gonna go to recipe. This is what you usually see. You're gonna hit export. And you always wanna do it as an image. So then you hit to file. And now, this is important. You see, usually it says bit files, like that's like an automatic. You're gonna wanna change that either into a JPEG or ping, because those are 2 images. I like ping, to me it's more clearer, but again, you have JPEG and ping. Either is fine. So then you're gonna hit save. And it's been exported. So then you go to your desktop, ignore all my mini documents, and here they are. Here's my label, and here's my almond cookie card with multi-column. So this is my recipe. I'm gonna attach this into my email. Sorry, I have so many documents open. And ask for approval. You can be really casual about it. We're pretty casual. We're straight into the point. I like to add emoji. There we go. Done. So hey Odessa, any recipe approval? Let me know if you need me to change it. Oh, let me make it a little nicer. Touch is sequence. Yeah. Okay. And then you would hit send. So I have all my recipe. You would hit send, and I have it under draft just because I like to test out my recipes before doing that. And then ideally when it comes to recipes, this is my own personal belief, try it out first. And if you look at our resources, we have it under here, number 4, saying ingredients, test recipe, videos, and lighting. I like to do it during this time because if it tastes like, it can be healthy, but it can taste awful. And you know, to make those changes, I don't know, I feel like it's easier to do it this way, but to each their own. Of course, this is the process. I mean, so, you know, Elaine's a veteran. She's been it since the very beginning, so this is what her needs. But yeah, you do need to get your recipe approved to send it, and then you need to do the rest, and I will go over creating a plan supporting content and on my next video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.
mini videos. And of course, if you have any questions, just call me anytime, and then expect an email from me so we can go over some dates, so we can go over, of course, any questions as well as content for when you have to do your content.